Hello, I'm Sophia Kaminsky, and I'm a customer success manager here at ClickUp. Thank you so much for taking the time to attend our joint webinar with Zapier to learn some use cases for small businesses. It should be a really exciting session, and I'm excited to show you both some possibilities for working as a small business in ClickUp, and briefly, I'll introduce my co-host from Zapier as well. Before we jump into that, though, I'd love to get a sense of where everyone is tuning in from. If you'd care to send us a quick message in the Zoom chat, that's always really exciting for us to see. So we'd love to welcome you to the session. I see Karina's from Brooklyn. Wow, that was the only person I have time to read their name, but we have folks from Nashville, Virginia, Los Angeles, Mexico, the Netherlands. So it's really late for you. Canada, Belfast, Brazil. Thank you so much for sharing and for staying awake or getting up early to be here with us today. Um, just a few housekeeping notes as well before we jump in. This webinar is being recorded, so after it's concluded, we will post the recording on our website, and you will also get a recording of this sent to you via email. So if you need to dip out early or you want to share this with someone that wasn't able to make it, you'll be able to do that. We also have some wonderful ClickUp customer coaches on with us today. So they'll be available to answer any questions you may have as I and my co-host are going through our content for the day. So if you do have questions you'd like us to answer, please send those in via the Zoom Q&A tab, and our coaches will be happy to answer those. And then at the end of the session, we will be taking some time to do a live Q&A and answer any ClickUp or Zapier questions you may have. You can chat amongst yourselves in the Zoom chat. Just know that we will not be checking those for questions. You'd be best to send those in the Zoom Q&A tab. But with that, I would love to just give you a brief overview of the structure of today's content and then introduce my co-host to you. So first, we're going to start by presenting Zapier and ClickUp independently, giving you a brief overview of what each tool is in case you're new to them, and kind of the basics of setting up automations to connect Zapier and ClickUp with third-party tools. And then we will be at the end showcasing a sneak peek of some Zapier integration updates that will be coming at some point later in the year. So definitely an exciting thing to stick around for at the end. But with that being said, I would love to introduce my co-host, Cameron Phillips, who is a senior customer champion at Zapier. So Cameron, would you care to say hello?
Hi, thank you so much for having me here today. I'm super excited to be a part of this.
Awesome. Yeah, we're thrilled to have you as well. So Cameron, with that, I would love to just pass screen sharing over to you if you'd like to walk us through your portion of the presentation and give a little overview of what you'll be covering.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's have a look here. Share that one. I just want to quickly call out, I saw in the Q&A, someone shared that they're calling in from Australia, which is my home country. So hello to anyone tuning in from Australia. It's nice to have you here. So Sophia mentioned, my name is Cameron and I'm a senior customer champion at Zapier. And today I'm going to help introduce you to Zapier and demonstrate a few ways in which you can connect ClickUp to some of the most popular apps using Zapier. Using Zapier, you can connect your ClickUp account with thousands of popular apps, including Gmail, Slack, and HubSpot. Over here, you can see some of the top apps on Zapier that other ClickUp users are integrating with. So what exactly is Zapier? Well, Zapier is a tool that helps you automate repetitive tasks between two or more apps without needing to know any code. So when an event happens in one app, Zapier can tell another app to perform or do a particular action. Every Zap starts with a trigger. This is a specific event that occurs in an app that tells the Zap to start running. An example of a trigger would be when you start a new email in Gmail. The trigger is then followed by one or more actions, and these are the tasks that you want to automate. An example of an action would be to create a new task in ClickUp. Putting the trigger and action together creates your automation, or as we call it, a Zap. So in the example I just provided, the Zap will create a new task in ClickUp every time you star an email in Gmail. Being a small business, it can be time-consuming to ensure your file hierarchies are consistent across multiple apps. For example, you might want to create a list in ClickUp for every Salesforce account that you create. So to begin, for the first example, let's build a Zap that will create a list in ClickUp each time a new Salesforce account is created. When you first log into your Zapier account, you're presented with a dashboard. This is where you can see a list of all of the Zaps that you've created. You can organize them into folders to help keep your workspace tidy and organized. To get started, you can either click Make a Zap or the Create Zap button, and this will take you into the Zap editor. The Zap editor is where you can build your Zap, build that automation. So the first thing you'll do in the Zap editor is set up your trigger. So again, this is the event that you want to trigger the Zap. So the first thing you would do is select the app. So in this case, we're selecting Salesforce, and the trigger event, which is new record. We want to trigger the Zap when a new record is created in Salesforce. Next, you would connect your Salesforce account. I've already connected my Salesforce account, so we're going to continue through here. And then sometimes, depending on the trigger you're using, you may have extra parameters that you can set. Salesforce obviously has a lot of different object types, and using Salesforce, you can specify which object you want to trigger the Zap. So here I've selected new account, or I've selected account. So when a new account record is created in Salesforce, the Zap will trigger. The last thing we need to do with setting up the trigger is to test it. When you test the trigger of the Zap, it will actually go ahead and make a call to your account, and it will load some records to use as a sample. And this sample helps you to set up the Zap. Following the trigger, we can add actions. Again, actions are the things that we want to have automated for us. So here I've already selected ClickUp and Create List as the action event. We can continue through to connect our ClickUp account, which I've already done here and selected. And here we can set up the action itself. So here is where we can define how we want that list to be created in ClickUp. So when creating a list, you can specify the workspace, space, and the folder where you want that list to be created. If you want to, you can specify a template to automatically be applied to that list. And then you can specify a list name. When you click in a field in the Zap editor, you'll notice this little window opens up. And this window shows you all of the fields that are available from the preceding steps within the Zap. So right now, because the only thing before this action is the trigger, it's showing me all of the different fields and values available from Salesforce. When creating this list, I want the list to use the same name of the account. So from this list, I can select the name field from Salesforce, and it's going to pop that in the list name. This is called field mapping. So field mapping allows your Zap to dynamically update and use the new incoming data every time the Zap runs. So the create list action will use the account name from Salesforce. If you want to, you can specify some list info, set a priority if you want to. When you're done setting all those parameters, you can continue through. And the last thing to do is test the action. When you test an action, it will use the data, the sample data available in the Zap editor to create that new record. So if I click test and review here, it's actually going to create that new list in ClickUp for me. If I come across to, just let me move that little zoom menu. If I come across to ClickUp here now, you'll see that under my Salesforce accounts folder, I now have this new list called Brittany Test, which was using the same name of the account that was created in Salesforce. Alrighty, so that was one example. Let's look at another example. Staying on top of new leads can be tricky. You might already start emails in Gmail to highlight what's important as an example, but there isn't really any room to add notes or to track other data. For the next example, we'll look at creating a Zap that triggers when you star an email in Gmail and then creates a task and task comment in ClickUp. Same as before, the Zap starts with the trigger. So we want to trigger from Gmail when a new star is emailed. We connect to the Gmail account and we test the trigger to load in an email to use as a sample to help set up the Zap. Following the trigger, we can add a new action to create a new task in ClickUp. Same as before, we can specify the workspace, space, folder, and list where we want that task to be created in ClickUp. And then we can give a task name. So for the task name, I want to use the subject of the email. So again, this is using field mapping. So every time the Zap runs, the Zap will use the subject of the email that you starred and use that as the task name in ClickUp. For the task description, I just want to say, follow up on this email within 7 days. So what I just did there is specify static text. Static text is when you type a value directly into a field like I just did. And it means that the same value will be used every time the Zap runs. So backup and task name, this is field mapping. Again, this dynamically updates every time the Zap runs. Whereas when you type something in, that same value will be used every single time. There are other parameters we can set. For example, you can specify assignees on the task if you want to, specify a task status and apply tags if you want to. I want to jump down here to due date. So if you look carefully, next to due date, you'll see a little calendar and clock icon. And this indicates that this is a smart field that can help interpret human terminology. And it can do so to help modify time and dates. So if I want to set a due date that is 30 days from the day the email was received, what I can do is in this menu, again, I've got all of the fields that Gmail provides. I can select the date the email was received, and then I can add plus 30 days. And what that's going to tell ClickUp to do is to add 30 days to the date of the email and use that result as the due date. So if I continue, and the next thing to do is I'm going to test this action. Again, testing is going to use all of the data that's available in the Zap editor here to create a new record. If I test and review, and then if I come back across to ClickUp here, if I look at my email follow-up under my Cameron list, I've now got a new task here, which is using the email subject as the task name. It's got a due date of May 7. Oops. And it's got that description there as well, follow up on this email within 7 days. Now I want to add on to this. So I want to create a task comment on the task that was just created. So similar to before, within the same Zap, this is all happening in sort of one event and one occurrence. Following the create task, we're going to add a new action to post a task comment. So we've got the workspace, space, folder, and list selected. Now here with task, we want to make sure that this dynamically refers to the task that was just created, and we want to apply the task comment to that brand new task. To do that, in the task field, what we can actually do is if we look at all of those fields that are available from ClickUp, one of them is an ID. And that ID is a unique ID for the task that was created in the previous step. So if we use field mapping to refer to the task ID, then it's going to tell this task comment action to apply the comment to the task that was just created. In the comment field, what I want to use is the email body of the email itself. So in this task comment action, I'm going to say, hey, create a task comment on the task that was just created and use the content from the email body. If I continue, and then we'll go ahead and test this action, what it will do is it will now update that task with a comment using the email body. So I'm just going to give this a refresh. And if we open that task, here we go. We can now see on the right-hand side here that a new task has been created using that entire email body, which is awesome. That's fantastic. It's super, super helpful. Makes things a lot easier. Alrighty, we're going to look at one more example here. So a new deal in Hubspot can require a lot of groundwork to set it up for success, especially if you're working in a small business. There can be so many things to do. When you're dealing with a deal, you'll want a dedicated place to record data, check off to-do list items, and quite a bit more most likely. So for the last demo, we'll look at how you can create a new folder, task, and checklist in ClickUp when you create a new deal in HubSpot to help you keep on top of everything. So looking at example number 3, same as example 1 and 2, the Zap starts with a trigger. So we select the app and the event that we want the Zap to trigger from. So in this case, we're going to trigger from a new deal in HubSpot. We've already connected our HubSpot account. Now with HubSpot, there are so many different properties that certain records in HubSpot can have. And HubSpot will give us a default list of properties that it retrieves. If necessary, you can actually select additional properties that you want to be made available when the Zap runs. Following that, you can test the trigger. Again, this is going to load some deals from HubSpot to use as samples, and this will help set up the rest of the Zap. Following the trigger, we will add a create folder in ClickUp action. So I've selected a workspace and space here, and for the folder name, I want to use the same name of the HubSpot deal. So again, using field mapping, in the folder name field, I can select deal name from HubSpot, and that tells ClickUp to use the deal name when creating that new folder. If we continue through and test this action, if we come across to ClickUp, in a moment here, we'll now see a new folder appears using the same name of that HubSpot deal, which was, so it should just be Cameron Zapier as an example. Yep, there we go. So we've now got a new folder called HubSpot Zapier. And what's convenient is when you create a new folder in ClickUp, by default, it will also create a new list for us. So after we've created a new folder, we also want that Zap to create a new task in ClickUp as well. So what we can do here is similar to the last example. What we can do is we can dynamically reference the ID of the folder that was just created. So in this folder field, we can select the folder ID, and in the list field, what we're going to do is select the ID of the list that was created by default. So this app is telling ClickUp, I want to create a task within the folder and within the list that was just created. For the task name, I'm just going to call it deal info. And just as an example for the task description, I'm going to add in the deal amount and the deal type. Now, when you just map fields in like this, all ClickUp is going to get in the task description is 10,000 and new business, which may not be particularly descriptive. So what we can do here is we can actually add titles. So we can add in amount, and we can also add in deal type as well. So those headings will precede the field values that HubSpot is providing. Similar to what you saw before, you can set other parameters such as specifying assignees, task status, tag if you want to. I'm going to jump down, and again, I'm going to specify the due date as the deal close date that HubSpot provided. If I continue, again, I'm going to test this action, which will go ahead and create a new task within the list and folder that was just created by the Zap. So if we come back across here, I'm going to do a little refresh. There we go. So I've got that new task within the list within the new folder. So everything's stacking on top of each other. If we click on the task, we've got the deal info name, the amount, the deal type, and then we also have that due date that was specified as well. The last thing we're going to stack on top of this is creating a checklist on the task within the list within the folder that was just created. So everything's truly stacking on top. So below create task, we've added a new checklist action. We've specified the workspace, the space. Again, we can specify the folder that was created earlier in the Zap, as well as specifying the list that was created earlier in the Zap as well. There it is. And then we can also field map the task ID. So again, this is all field mapping. So every time the Zap runs, it's going to dynamically refer to the idea of the folder, list, and task that was just created to ensure that the data is being created in the right place. You can give your checklist a name, and then you can actually add as many different checklist items as you want. So if every new deal you create in HubSpot should have a specific set of checklist items, you can define all of those in your Zap. So when the Zap runs, it will automatically create those to-do list items on the task directly. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to test this action, new checklist in ClickUp. And if I come back across, there we go. I'm just going to give this a little refresh. If we look at that task again that was already created, we'll now see that it's added our test checklist or to-do list there as well. And you can check off items 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever they might be. And you'll also see that on the task itself, it gives us that little task checklist to-do icon and a count of what's been completed. So again, when a Zap is triggered, all of the action events that are in the Zap run one right after the other. So everything happens fairly instantaneously for you. And this can help to save a lot of time manually performing repetitive tasks between ClickUp and the other popular apps that you're using. So there you have it. 3 examples of using Zapier and ClickUp with some popular apps that a lot of other users are connecting ClickUp with on Zapier. I hope you found this insightful and has given you some inspiration. And I'm now going to hand the reins back over to Sophia to keep things moving along.
Thank you so much, Cameron. That was so interesting to watch. You are truly a Zapier wizard. So I definitely learned a lot. And I think the coolest thing about Zapier is just that it's really in line with ClickUp's vision of keeping all of your work in one place. It really reduces the amount of context switching you have to do between tools to get your work done. And it just saves you a lot of time. And it's also a cost saver because you don't have to invest so much time in spending hours and hours in these separate tools. So thank you so much for giving us that presentation.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Awesome. So yeah, from here, I will jump into my portion. And first, for any of you who are new to ClickUp and maybe coming from the Zapier side of things first and foremost, I wanted to give a very brief overview of what ClickUp actually is. So ClickUp is a productivity tool that is meant to organize not only your projects and tasks, but also it is a place where you can organize things like documentation. You can have high-level conversations with people to avoid spending so much time in email. You can even create an information intake system via a form. So again, I'll show you one specific example of how you can connect Zapier and ClickUp to Slack, which actually is quite useful in my industry of customer success. But I'd also like to cover a little bit of information about our native automation feature first, because there's a lot you can do with that directly inside of ClickUp without needing to involve any other tools. So in terms of small businesses, I won't be going into a thorough overview of how ClickUp is structured, but I did want to just briefly mention that ClickUp is set up in a hierarchy structure, which is meant to help you organize work by department or initiative. In this case, I have a space for my customer success team, a space for my order intake area if I'm selling a product. And within the space, it's broken up into folders and lists, which allow you to bucket work related to the larger space. And the actual action items where the work gets done would be tasks. So tasks are what you're seeing in the middle of my screen here. And these always live within a ClickUp list. So very brief 30-second overview of how the hierarchy works. The folders and lists that I'll be demonstrating for you today are actually available to you to play around with as well. You can access these once you've created a ClickUp account by going into our template center. So if you browse our community template area, you'll see we have a wide variety of ready-made templates to help you familiarize yourself with the platform. And you can find, for example, the new order example by simply searching for order or order intake, and you'll be able to add the template into your workspace. So if that's something you're interested in doing after the session, you can do that by navigating to the template center. Let's chat a little bit about how triggers and actions work for ClickUp native automation. So when you're applying an automation, you'll start with a trigger, just like what Cameron demonstrated in Zapier. So the thing that has to happen in order to prompt the action. We also have what are called conditions. So these are things that have to be true in order for the trigger to prompt the action. And I'll show you a couple of concrete examples with conditions, triggers, and actions as well. One way that you could utilize automations with the new orders example here would be in conjunction with our form view. So in this case, this would be a great way to collect product orders. Our form view is something that you can embed on your website, or you can just simply send a direct link. And anyone that fills in this form will create a task for you to take action on inside of ClickUp. So this form is actually included if you add in that template into your workspace. But all we've done here is drag and drop a variety of standard and custom fields onto the form that you can set as optional or required when people actually fill it out. And you'll also notice that there is a branding feature here too. So you have the option to add in your brand image to make it a little bit more personal. So when a task is created from the form, a simple automation that you could set up would be to assign the task created from the form to the appropriate product manager who's responsible for shipping it out. So this is also a way that you could create an approval system or just hold people accountable for getting an action item done. So if I go into my automation here, I could set up an automation so that anytime a task is created in my orders area, I could change the assignee to the person responsible for handling order shipments. You can also compound actions on top of one another for more complex automated workflows. So for example, maybe you would also want to apply a due date so that this person is accountable for shipping out the order X days after the automation is triggered. So let's actually take a look now and see what this would look like if a new task was created to submit a request for a product. And you'll notice all of these fields with the asterisk mean that they are required fields that the person has to fill out. Once it's gone through, what we will see is we'll be able to go in our orders list area and we can see that a new task was created for that request. The task was assigned to the appropriate person and the due date was set out 14 days from the trigger date. So when the due date arrives, she would get a notification in ClickUp that she needs to take action on that. Statuses are also a great way to set up automation. So these are the steps that your tasks have to move through in ClickUp from when they're to do to closed. So in this case, we have pretty simple statuses set up just to note the status of the shipment. Another common use case would be passing the task back and forth to the appropriate teammate based on the status, because not every teammate often needs to be involved in the entirety of a task. Maybe they just need to come in and out at different points. So another automation we could set up for this use case might be when our due date arrives, and we could have a condition based on the status. So if the status of this task is not shipped, so anything except being shipped, we could add a reminder comment in here. So we could mention Carvania, who is set to be assigned to tasks that are created in this list, but we have a really cool feature, teams, user groups basically, where I could actually just say at assignees for anyone that's involved. What's the status here? Is this ready to ship? And that would also trigger a notification on the due date, just to hold people accountable for getting the task shipped out. So the goal of ClickUp is that you no longer have to have status related meetings. You can just look at the task and be able to tell what the status is, and automation can really assist you with that accountability piece. Now, in conjunction with some of the Gmail examples that Cameron demonstrated, I also wanted to talk a little bit about our email and ClickUp functionality, which includes automation options. So email and ClickUp is a great way to actually communicate with anyone, even people that aren't users in your ClickUp account, directly from a task. So our support team uses this a lot to communicate with customers about bug updates or feature requests. So it's one step closer to actually managing your ticketing system directly from ClickUp tasks. So just to show you a few of the integration settings related to email and ClickUp, you're able to link any email account to the email and ClickUp function. It does not have to be the email associated with your account. You have control over who can send from that address. You can add custom signatures to completely, it won't be obvious to the recipient that you're sending the email from ClickUp, but the signature can give it a professional look. And then you can also include message templates. So if you have those standard replies that you're sending out over and over again, I'll show you one that I've actually created for, order shipment confirmation. This will save you a lot of time. You can just automatically send out that templated email to communicate with your customers without having to manually type it out every time. So let's go over a quick example of how you could utilize the email and ClickUp feature via automation. Let's say we go into that automation menu, again, related to our new orders folder. And if we browse, we can check out the email specific automation integrations. So there's quite a few options that you can explore here, but the one that I'm interested in for this example would be when a status changes, then we're going to send an email. So we'll just link that account. And I want to notify the customer automatically when the status changes to shipped, that they can expect the order. Now, if you'll recall, when I filled out that form example to request product, I filled in an email custom field where I indicated my contact information. So ClickUp is suggesting to me when I'm sending the email to fill in the contact email custom field value so that it's automatically going to go to the appropriate address. So I'll send from my address to the contact email address. And then in the body of the email, I can either type out something manually right now that I want to be sent over, or I can access a previous template that I have created here. So let's say I plug in that order shipped option, just letting the customer know, hey, we've shipped out your order. You can expect it within 10 to 12 days. I can also plug in that signature so that it looks nice. Maybe your customer support lead can plug in their signature here. And you'll also notice that you can add in various fields into your email when you send it off that are going to automatically be linked to whatever task you're sending the email from. So for example, maybe I have the subject as your ClickUp order has been shipped. I have a custom field included in this task with the tracking number for the order. So what I could do is actually link to the tracking number fields in the subject line so that the customer would have that on hand. You could also put in the task name that the customer indicated when they put in the request, so that all of that information is included for them. Cool. So once we create that, keep in mind that it can take a couple of minutes for you to see the automation action kick in, but it should be as simple as changing the status to shipped. And then pretty soon an email would be sent off to the email contact fields. Now, the really cool thing is, I'll show you an example of what it would look like once the email's actually been sent out. It would look something like this. The cool thing is that the customer is able to email me back and it will appear in the same ClickUp task. I can then reply to them back and forth from here without needing to open my email up at all. And the customer would have no insight into the fact that I was sending this from ClickUp. So automation can really help you in terms of easing the number of manual emails that you're sending day to day. All right. Lastly, I wanted to demonstrate one other Zapier ClickUp integration option, which would be ClickUp and Slack. So Slack is an incredibly useful tool in terms of communicating with your team. We actually have a very robust Slack integration that we use internally at ClickUp to do things like send notifications to Slack based off of a ClickUp status change or something. You can also quick create a ClickUp task from Slack or add a comment to an existing task. Sometimes though, it can be useful to set up other types of triggers from Slack that will do something in ClickUp and vice versa. And that's where the Zapier option comes in. So one example that I have been playing around with is when a new message is posted to a channel in Slack, we'll create a new task in ClickUp. So the use case for this might be maybe you've set up another Zapier integration between your social media platform and Slack, like maybe Twitter. And whenever you are tagged in a tweet, the message from Twitter will be posted in a specific Slack channel, or any other way that you're integrating your platforms that you're interacting with customers to Slack could be that first step to getting the message in an appropriate Slack channel. You might want your customer support team to take action on that message from ClickUp, maybe via that email and ClickUp feature that we just covered. So this is a very simple automation that I've set up so that when a new message is posted in a specific Slack channel, which I've called urgent issues, we are going to create a task in ClickUp. So I simply linked it to my account, and I have determined that Slack should send the task to my customer success space rather, into the urgent customer issues list. So my support team can monitor this list, and anytime an urgent message pops into that Slack channel, it would just create a task for them to open up with the customer and respond to their complaint or their feedback. So another one step further that you could go would be applying a ClickUp task template when the trigger prompts the task to be created in ClickUp. So if you have a standard operating procedure for addressing customer tickets, maybe you put that in a checklist in a task template and have ClickUp apply that task template in the automation. And then I did use some of those insert data options so that I would put in the raw text from the Slack message inside of the task description. So as an example, let's say I have my urgent issues channel pulled up. And once that comment is popped in, it should create a new task for us to take action on right here. So I opted to set the due date of that task to today. I assigned it to the customer support lead in this example, and included the raw text so that they can see exactly what needs to be done. And they can also link back to the Slack message from the title if they need some more context about the complaint. And from here, they could start using that email and ClickUp feature manually as well. In the comment area, you can click to send an email, and you're able to actually open that up. You could plug in a template to say, we've received your report. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. And we'll get back to you and start that communication chain from the task. This is just helpful so that you have one single source of truth for your customer interactions. Even if you're using Slack to talk about common issues, having that task history in ClickUp that you can look back on, that you can filter for, is really, really helpful when you're trying to report on customer data at a high level. All right, so with that being said, the last thing that I just wanted to mention before we open it up for questions would be a few upcoming integration changes that will be coming for our Zapier integration. Now, keep in mind that we don't have a precise date for when these will be coming. We expect them to be out sometime much later this year, but we wanted to give you a sneak peek nevertheless. So our planned updates here include search. So with the search update that's coming, an action within Zapier will allow people to find ClickUp tasks dynamically when something happens. So for example, it can use anything in the trigger to find a specific task in ClickUp. Let's say you're using the Google Sheets Zap, and there's a new row added to the Google Sheet for each new customer inquiry. Zapier will be able to search based on any of those columns in ClickUp to find a task that matches the particular phrase or information that came in. And then it will give the next step a task ID. So this will create a completely dynamic system where every time the Zap runs, it will affect a different task because it went through and redid a search based on the new incoming data. We also have an update coming. This will work in relation to the search. So once the search has found a task, you can update an existing task with new data. So you don't have to assign a single task to always be updated. Rather, anytime new data comes in via the trigger, Zapier will track down the correct associated task. And if no task is found, then there will be an option to create a new task based on the data. Finally, we have, and one other thing I should actually mention about this update will allow you to update the task title, description, due date, priority, assignee, and all custom fields. So it's pretty all-encompassing. Whether in regard to the custom field update, it'll allow you to add new data to empty custom fields, which is a very popular request. You'll also be able to replace the data of current custom fields. Now, one piece of information I did get from our product team as they're considering the implementation of these integration updates is that there isn't a modifying data of custom fields option included in this first iteration. So for example, when X happens, check the custom field value, and if it is Y, then do this. That would be likely something that we release in future iterations, or possibly might be possible via a more advanced Zap. But hopefully that gives you some exciting information about what's on the horizon for the ClickUp Zapier integration. And with that, I would love to open it up for any questions we may have in the Q&A tab. So I'll just pop those open, and Cameron, I may jump back and forth with you depending on who the question better suits. All right, we have a question from Latoya. I tried to set up assigning a chat in the dashboard for a client. When I was able to do so, is there a way to assign guests to a chat widget on the dashboard? So for now, Latoya, we're just going to be focusing on questions related specifically to Zapier and ClickUp automations. But I see that my colleague Thomas is getting back to you on that. So hopefully he'll be able to give you a good answer to that question. Our coaches have been phenomenal in really busting out answers to all the questions in the Q&A tab. Just a reminder, we have some more time. So if anyone would like to ask a question, please feel free to send that to us in the Q&A tab. I do see one from Neil. Where do we go to edit or create our signatures for use in the email? Can the signatures be graphical? Yeah, I can take that one. I will just share my screen for a moment. So when you're setting up the email integration, you do have to be an admin in ClickUp to access this area. In the email area, you will see a signatures tab, and you can either use rich text or HTML to create the signature. Mine was created via HTML. Those are the only two options at this time, but hopefully that clarifies what's possible at the moment. Gabrielle asks, can a ticket that is created in Hubspot become a ticket that is created in ClickUp automatically? Cameron, you gave a good job demoing that. Would you care to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, of course. So our HubSpot integration does support a new ticket trigger event. So you can absolutely trigger a Zap when a new ticket is created in HubSpot and then send that through to ClickUp. So if you want to create that as a task, or I'm not familiar with all of the different record types in ClickUp, but you could take that to create it as a task in ClickUp if you want to add it to a list or as a task comment. But you can absolutely take that new ticket data from HubSpot and using a Zap send it on to ClickUp in a variety of different ways.
Yeah, exactly. So I've been mentioning task a lot, Gabrielle, and you can think of that as a ClickUp ticket. That's where you could use the email and ClickUp feature. So once the task is created via Zapier from HubSpot, that's when you could use that email functionality. Kiara asks, in order to set up the email automation, does it have to be attached to a task created from a form submission so that the bot knows the recipient's email? No, it does not have to be started from a form, but keep in mind that in order to have that chain back and forth with an outside party, it has to start with you sending an email from the task, whether that be an automated email or manually sending the email from the task. And then any subsequent replies to that email will be in the same thread. If someone were to send you an email and deposit it in a ClickUp task via Zapier, or we have a native feature that does that, and then you use the email and ClickUp feature from there, that would create two distinct email threads. Vincent asks, do you plan to add an ID to the custom field? Right now, if I need to use the name of the field in Integromat to push data in the custom field, if the name of the field changes, everything breaks. Interesting. We do have a custom task ID feature. I do not believe that you can take action on that via Zapier. That's an advanced question, Cameron. I don't know if you're able to answer that, but.
So that one, they are referencing using Integromat because the Zapier ClickUp integration doesn't yet support custom fields coming soon. That's not one that I can speak to.
Yeah, Vincent, that would be something to definitely reach out to our support team about, since this session is more specific to Zapier, but you can reach them at help@clickup.com for further clarity on that. John, you asked, would you please explain the conceptual difference between Zapier and ClickUp automations for newbies such as myself? That is a very good question, John. Yeah, so ClickUp automations, the benefit is that they are a bit more robust in terms of the actions you can take on ClickUp fields. So, for example, you can easily change or update ClickUp custom fields based off of certain triggers with the native feature. But the great thing about Zapier is that A, updates are coming that will make it more in line with the native automation, and B, you can connect to over 1,000 other applications outside of ClickUp via Zapier. So while you might not be able to fill in all of the unique fields in ClickUp yet via Zapier, you can still create connections between the tools with triggers and actions. Anything you wanted to add to that, Cameron?
No, that pretty well hit the nail on the head. As Sophia mentioned, Zapier, we integrate right now. We're actually getting close to 4,000 apps that we integrate with. So we're a really robust platform to help connect all of the different apps you use to help move data from app A to app B seamlessly. And with those future ClickUp integrations that are coming, and honestly, I'm super excited for, it'll make that experience even better.
Yes, absolutely. I am standing with bated breath for the ability to fill in custom field values and ClickUp via Zapier. So that should be a really awesome update. All right, we have a few more minutes. Happy to stick around for a couple more questions, but as we wrap things up, I wanted to thank you again so much for your time, and hopefully you learned some interesting information about how to connect ClickUp and Zapier. There are a few ways you can get in touch with our support team if you have additional questions after today's session. So, whoops, I think I lost my screen there. Can you see that okay, Cameron? Can you just confirm?
I can see your ClickUp.
Perfect. That's the goal. So if you are a ClickUp user, under your profile avatar, you will be able to access the Help Center where you can send us a chat message to ask any additional questions about Zapier and ClickUp. You can also access things like our video and doc center to learn more about connecting ClickUp and Zapier. You can also reach out to our support team via email at help@clickup.com. Cameron, anything that you wanted to share regarding how to get in touch with yourself and the Zapier team?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you have any questions, if you want to learn more about using Zapier or connecting ClickUp with Zapier, you can reach out to our support team at contact@zapier.com. You can also head over to zapier.com. We've got a lot of great demo, getting started articles, a lot of content to help you understand how Zapier works and to help set you up for success. But our support team, this might be biased, but I think we're a terrific support team. We really like helping, we really like being able to help enable users to automate their daily processes. So absolutely welcome you to send us an email.
Yeah, it looks like Karina agrees with you, Cameron. She gave you a shout out. So appreciate that, Karina. We will be posting the recording of this on our website within the next 24 hours. And you'll also get an emailed recording of it. But again, thank you so much for your time. It was great meeting all of you. And Cameron, thank you for your time as well.
Thank you so much.
All right, take care. Thank you.